Vice Mayor Dick Cheese.
Here.
Councilmember Dave Langer.
Here.
Councilmember Robert Spalding.
Here.
Councilmember Amy Speak.
Here.
Mayor Bruce Howard.
Here. You okay with that, Carol, if I make that move? Next, we'll do approval of minutes. So everybody had a chance to read the minutes. We have, what, 2 sets?
August the 4th and August the 14th.
Any changes to those minutes? Dan, Amy, Bob?
No.
Can I get a motion?
Move we approve.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Ethan, just, I know you get to start 2 hours late tomorrow, right? All right. But just for a matter of your time, if you want to come up and give your presentation on your Eagle Scout project, have it.
Absolutely.
And thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
You have to state your name and your address just for our record.
Okay. Ethan Fell, 26 Cool Springs Road, Signal Mountain.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members, members of the community. Tonight I'm here to discuss with you all the prospects of my Eagle Scout project. I cannot thank you enough for the opportunity to speak in front of you all tonight. The amount of time and dedication not only myself but other members of this community have put into this project is outstanding, and just being able to see that represented here is, incredible. I've spoken with many of you all already, and I've spoken with many of the community members as well about what my Eagles project is. But just for a quick recapitulation, these past months I've worked with Nolan Elementary, HCDE, the town, and several contractors in the area to coordinate the construction of a sidewalk at the intersection at Sam Powell and Shackleford Ridge Road that will cross over to the Nolan Elementary crosswalks. Every morning and every afternoon, several families walk across this area through dirt, ditches, and mud just to get their kids to school every morning. And they are also dangerously close to the road, which is exactly why a sidewalk is exactly what is needed there most. The sidewalk will cross through a little wooded area that divides the street and the school, and it will end, like I said, at the crosswalk. The sidewalk will dramatically increase both the safety and leisure that the families will have in crossing every day. And in my opinion, and so many others of this community, this is a long overdue addition. Myself and contractors that I've been working with are in mutual agreement that the project should, funds willing, be completed the 23rd and 24th of this month, that weekend. We are all ecstatic that it can be completed this soon. And tonight I'm going to ask for yours as well as the community members' support. This project is going to cost approximately $5,000. Already I've collected $1,150 in total, and I received promise from the Dogwood Grove community, which is the main community that is going to be impacted by this addition, that they will pay for a third of this project, and starting tonight and tomorrow I'm going to open up to general donations. I want to remind you that this money goes beyond the benefit of an Eagle Scout and a few families. My project will only grow more and more relevant as more families move to Signal and build houses, and this section will become increasingly important. With that in mind, I'd like to open it up to any questions or comments you might have.
The only comment I have is that's a phenomenal project you've taken on. Thank you.
So you've raised a little over 1,000, and Dogwood's going to pay a third of the 5,000 total?
Yes, so Dogwood has raised $650 so far. I emailed them about a week and a half ago. I emailed all of their community, the people that live in their neighborhood, and I told them about my project. And I also went to one of their neighborhood meetings, and I talked with a lot of them about that. And so in really just the first 3 days that I sent out that email, I have raised $650 from them, which was outstanding. I was so happy with that. And then since then, just a few days ago, I sent them another email thanking them for that, and then just reminding them about the upcoming date, because that was just a new installment a few days ago, and just to thank them for everything. And then the other $500 is from general donations from other members of the community.
Have you thought about setting up a GoFundMe?
That's exactly what I'm doing, starting tonight. I have not opened that up just because I was going to wait and see how much money we could raise with that third, and see if we could completely raise that third before we say, GoFundMe, this is exactly what we need. And so instead of saying, you know, we need $4,000 however many dollars, instead of if they could raise $1,000 or $1,200, then being able to say, you know, 3,800 or so.
Bo, is there any problem as far as logistics of this?
The majority of the project is actually we don't know the problem. There are issues with the right-of-way adjacent to the Shackford Bridge there. There are a lot of utilities in there that basically the project would have to be hand dug and work. And I think the cost of the contractor doing that would be substantially higher. So ultimately, the project's going to come off of the right-of-way pretty quickly, and the majority of it's on the property of no one.
I want to introduce you to Gail and Myron, who are both with two different news organizations that cover these meetings. It's probably a good idea if you get with them and give them your information. Hopefully, if they can get that GoFundMe in the paper, you'll have a lot of Nolan and SMHS folks that'll give to that, and I think you'll get your goal pretty quick.
Absolutely.
Are you good with the cost estimate?
I had really no idea.
I don't know if we have a request.
Well, we said $5,000. I'm just curious, is this complete?
I don't know. The town is assisted in terms of connecting him with contractors and trying to help him find contractors that would work with him, but we haven't been directly involved in pricing or quoting because it's not a town project.
If you have questions about that, I can provide you with some of that information.
Well, we have to ask, so.
Okay.
Hang on just a minute. Things like signage, safety, all of that, we're in compliance with what if the town were doing it.
As I
As
said,
far as we know.
the crosswalk and all of that will be signed and marked appropriately. Beyond that, it's really on, for lack of a better term, private properties because it goes onto the school property as opposed to being in the right of way as a conventional sidewalk would be.
I guess all that suggests is to make sure that we coordinate so that all the things that need to be done are done.
Yes,
The red has been very much involved in the process of
Okay.
assisting him with.
So you're good with that?
Right, I am.
As part of the project, though, across the street, it's going to have the crosshatch for the sidewalk.
You mean like a crosswalk with stripes? That's already established at the Sam Powell Shop.
So it's already there.
That's already there, and then Nolan has
So you don't
already
need the
has
town
some
or
on
anybody
there,
to
so.
paint that up?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Amy, is this the project you've been talking about?
Yes.
Or is this
This is the one.
This is it. Okay, so this satisfies what you've been
Mhm.
trying to, okay, very good.
Is there anything we can do?
Fantastic.
Provide support in terms of spreading the word, and then if you would like to provide personal contributions, I have sheets with all that information,
I'll take one of those, Ethan.
so I can hand that to you after the meeting, and then just spreading the word and showing to people that this is what the community needs, this is what these family needs to stay safe, and as the community grows, just that sort of support. And if the town can contribute financially, that would be fantastic. I completely understand because a vast majority of it is on Nolan's property.
We will ask to put this on our agenda, our work agenda meeting, so we can talk about that then. Is that okay, Bob? Sure. Okay. Anything else for you?
I just wanted to add that to everybody here that this young man is absolutely an outstanding student and an example to all of the children up here, and I am so impressed that you have taken this upon yourself. I know him personally, he's friends with my daughter, and anybody in the audience, if you are willing to help this young man set an example for the other kids up here, please do so. I mean, this is really an amazing project that you've started. So, thank you, Ethan.
Anyone else? Ethan, great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan.
That's a great kid.
Such a good kid.
I was reminded too that sometimes up here we have a tendency to lean back when we're talking, and some of the folks in the audience can't hear us all the time, right, Amy? All right. So if you would just, and I'm very guilty of it as well, so if we just remember as we're talking, we lean forward so everybody can hear.
Can I add just one thing to that?
Absolutely.
Generally, there's this fear when people hear feedback that they're too close to the mic. It's the opposite. So if you hear feedback, if you lean into the microphone, it's more likely to go away. But if you pull back, then the sound system has to be turned up, which makes things feedback. So like your mic, sorry Boyd, the way it's down and away from you now, but maybe it's for picking up. If you guys all stay closer, it's just going to be easier for the recordings that everybody wants to hear as well. And same thing like for this one, when you guys speak at the microphone out here, touch it and move it in front of your face. It's just better. Move back.
Do we have that hand sanitizer?
Thank you, David.
Thank you. With that said, and any council, anything else? Okay, we're going to move into citizens' opportunity to address the council. Please remember that your comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and when you step up to the mic, please state your name and your address so Carol can put it on the record. Who would like to go first? Mr. McCamish?
I don't know if this one will reach up to my face. Michael McMcamish, 5131 Old Chestnut Ridge Road. I, amongst a couple hundred other people, gathered at the high school, middle school gym this past Thursday and received a lot of information. And I'd say the first 30 minutes of the presentation was, to me, the most important and impactful, and it addressed the ownership of the buildings. My colleagues and I, we've been monitoring the situation since last December, and we have brought up the question of ownership of the buildings for some time. Other people, other individuals have also brought it up. And it's something that the committee has stated is not for them to consider. But to me and to many, it is, without knowing the ownership of the buildings, there was no reason for the committee to be doing what they've done. And they've put a lot of hard work. There's been a lot of money spent. And so at this point, we've heard from Hamilton County legally how they perceive this. And Scott Bennett put forward their position. They are not going to give up the buildings. That is just plain and simple, clear as day, put forward. What it's going to cost to get those buildings, you're going to have to go through Hamilton County. That itself is going to be a legal struggle that's going to be economically draining. Are you willing to go to that point, is my question. And not only that, but if it's going to go to court, you're going to have to sue for those buildings because there's an interlocal agreement right here that the ad hoc committee knew about because the former mayor's signature is on this interlocal agreement. And they knew about it. The former mayor was on the ad hoc committee. So this question of the buildings is going to go to court. And you're going to have to sue Hamilton County and Walden, our neighbors. Again, is it worth it? That's my question. Are you willing to sue our neighbors, Walden? Are you willing to sue Hamilton County? We've talked about the division that this has in our community. This is where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Menzel?
Kevin Menzel, 54 Middle Creek Road, Signal Mountain. So thanks for the opportunity to address the committee. I have a different position. I moved here to Signal Mountain about 6 years ago from Texas. We moved up here for the community, for the schools. And it's been a great place to relocate our family. It's been a great situation. Well, I also went to the meeting on Thursday night, and what I would say is that what I would ask this committee is to continue to press into and to uncover stones. I think what we heard was one side of a legal argument, and a lot of us are business folks, and we understand that there's always two sides of a legal argument. There's one side that was presented. I've read through those same documents. They're public information, and I disagree with the position that was presented by the legal counsel of Hamilton County. So my point is this: there's no harm in continuing to press, to making sure that we understand completely the issues. I think, what we're not asking to do here tonight is vote. Should we have a separate independent school district? We're asking to continue to press, to understand the situation, and to gather as much information as possible. That's it. So that's what I would ask this council, is to continue to press into it completely, to continue to understand. Anecdotal information at the end of one is always dangerous. I will tell you my personal experience. We're either a product or a victim of our personal situation. But I grew up in small town Texas. Population came from a farm town, population 1,000. And in that situation, we had a Thorndale Independent School District. There was its own superintendent. The town next to us that had a population of 800 had Friedl Independent School District. Each independent school district had its own functioning focus. Great experience growing up. Everybody graduated, went to the University of Texas, went to Texas A&M, etc. Great experience. The counter to that is when I moved my kids to the Dallas Metroplex, massive school district, and we had to put our kids in private school because of the massive school district that couldn't handle a quality education. I'm not saying that this situation mirrors that, because we love Signal Mountain. I'm just asking to continue to press into it because I think our students are worth it, and I think this council's done a good job of being progressive, but at the same time considering the values of Signal Mountain, and would ask you to continue to do that. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to address the council? Ms. Baker?
Elizabeth Baker, 1 Churchill. My concerns have continued to grow over this once unbiased process to find out school liability that has been set forth by this council almost a year ago. As the process unfolded, it became evident that at least one member on this council was fully aware of the interlocal agreement and the Educational Cooperative Act. But those council members continue to insist that case law will prevail in awarding the school buildings to the town. Our mayor has continued to insert himself into the SSBC meetings, whispering to the SSBC secretary during open meetings, instructing and directing SSBC on how to write the report, what to include in the report, and what he wants council to know, or what he thinks council wants to know. As pointed out by our mayor, this process has progressed in a backwards manner. Citizens have asked for it to be paused and made right, but it never was. Left uncorrected, it has allowed the process to become biased and untrustworthy. The perfect example is the survey that SSBC created. As we were informed in the email, this survey is anonymous. There is absolutely no way to respond that responses can be linked to any individual. However, just last week at the SSBC subcommittee meeting, responses were mocked with comments like, well, the good news is this person believed it was an anonymous survey. Ha, 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 and they laughed. Whether I agree with what the independent school district needs to be researched or not is beside the point. I am a resident of Signal Mountain, and you are my elected officials. You are accountable. My only question is how do you plan to make an unbiased decision on a biased report? Thank you.
Anybody else like to address the council? Dr. Friedl?
John Friedl, 412 North Palisades Drive. I'd like to respond to the 3 comments that have been made so far. I am chair of the SSVC. First of all, as to the ownership of the property, when was the last time you saw a lawyer stand up before a microphone and say, my client says he didn't do it, but no jury of 12 sane people would possibly acquit him, and I'm afraid he's going to do some hard time. Mr. Bennett is an attorney who has a client who has an interest, and it's his job to stand before the microphone and tell you and the public what his client's interest is. It would be malpractice for him to tell you that there's another side that has a strong argument. I am an attorney. I'm licensed to practice in Michigan, but not in Tennessee. I don't plan to stand here and give you the arguments. You have an able attorney who can do that. I will simply say that I have looked at the documents, I have read the case law, I have looked at the statutes. There is another side. Which side will prevail? I can't tell you. But there are strong arguments for both sides of this issue as to ownership of the property, and it is not the job of the SSVC to reach a decision on that. You've made that very clear, and it would not be appropriate for us to do that. Simply keep an open mind and wait for the situation to resolve. As to the question of bias of my committee, I don't care who whispers in my ear or anyone else's ear, and I don't care what they say. I take my responsibility seriously. I will not allow bias to creep into that report. We are about 3 weeks away from finishing our task and issuing a report which will come to you, the town council. And I can assure you, because I'm writing the report, I can assure you that that is going to be an unbiased report that will present all sides of the issues, that will present a clear statement of what the obstacles are as well as what the benefits would be. And it is going to be up to you, the town council, to take it from there and decide if those obstacles are too great, or if not, how you need to address them. So I know there are people in the community who are upset and don't want to see this process go forward. I know there are people in the community who believe that our committee is biased. I can assure you, council members, that that is not the case, and that we will look at this fairly and give you a report that I hope you can be proud of. Thank you.
John, can I ask you a question before you go?
Certainly.
I've been accused several times of being too involved in the process or trying to impose my will on the process somehow. I've sat in when Amy could not make meetings, and I've been to other meetings when I was interested in the subject matter, because I think this is, I think it's a very important topic to look at ways to better educate our kids. In your opinion, have I influenced you or anyone else on the committee or tried to impose myself?
No, you haven't tried to impose yourself. You have influenced us in the sense that you have information that we didn't have that we thought was important. So has Councilwoman Speak. We have gone to her for information because she is our liaison on the committee. So has Town Manager Boyd Field. We have gone to him asking for information when it has been relevant and we needed it. So has Mr. Nolan, when we have needed information about legal issues past or present, that we could get from him because of his relationship to the town and because of his historical corporate memory. There are lots of people that we've gone to for information because that's our task. But so your influence has been the same as other people that we've gone to, but it hasn't been imposed on us. It's been at our request.
So those folks, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so those folks you mentioned have helped to provide you the resources you needed to do what the committee's tasked with.
Absolutely. It would be irresponsible for us not to see
Has
that.
any one of those folks, in your opinion, tried to drive a pro or against during this process?
No, that's simply not the case.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Dr. Friedl before he goes?
I don't have a question, but I do want to speak to the fact that Mayor Howley has been ridiculed publicly several times for being at the meeting. We are volunteers. I am the liaison. I cannot be at every single meeting. I would be abandoning my family, my other responsibilities on the council. Mayor Howley is sitting in at meetings because I cannot be there. If I were at every single meeting, I would be going 3 days a week at some times. So I just want to be clear that it is, I think, unfair how Mayor Howley has been criticized for sitting at the meetings. He's there in my absence, and thank God he is, because I cannot be there at all of them. So.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Any other comments for the council? Renee?
Renée Shoop, 2823 Kell Road. I wasn't thinking of getting up tonight. I would like to ask if it could be possible for the SSBC to somehow find a way to include information and feedback from our Signal Mountain teachers and administrators before they consider their report complete. Because this is a vital resource of information that has not been tapped into on an official level, to my understanding. And I think that we are doing a disservice to these hardworking individuals who are at the heart of our schools, and they are the reason our schools are so great, and we need to know how this would impact them and how they feel about it. And I think that they deserve to be heard on an official level. So that's not really a question, it's not a suggestion.
I think that's a fair question, and I know that there's an SSBC meeting on Wednesday night, and if we could, would you mind asking the question at that meeting for them, please?
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Charlotte Voss, and I live at 403 Brady Point Road.
And thank you for your continued service on the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
And your, I learned recently, the, what's the administrative hearing officer, although you've never had to have one, we thank you for that as well.
And I will say that Mr. Menzel is one of our star mock trials coach of that team. If I make it flow. I appreciate Mr. Friedl being here. I don't know him, but I have sent a question to the SSBC asking if they could include in the budget the cost of being in the buildings, what it would take. And I've been ignored. I've gotten run around. I know Mayor Howley has tried to help respond to those questions in the past. I've gotten the runaround, and what he's basically said, or what the SSV has basically said, is this is a legal issue, or it's not. We're not responsible for that part of the budget, or something like that. You're talking about a committee that's putting together a budget of what it's going to cost to run a school system, and how can you do that if you haven't budgeted rent, the cost of being in the building? You can't. If you were to go ask for a loan from a bank for a new business and you didn't include rent, they wouldn't give you a loan. They'd say, come back when you tell me the full budget. So right now, Mr. Friedl mentioned we have a legal dispute.
Doctor,
Doctor,
just so you,
I don't know him.
yeah.
Dr. Friedl says we have a legal dispute, which we may. And I've told people in the past, and I'm a lawyer, if you have a nasty divorce case, the only people that win are the lawyers. And I hate to say that. I don't say that proudly. So you may get yourself into a nasty divorce case. where the only people that are going to win are the lawyers, because the town's going to pay a lot of money, and the county's going to pay a lot of money, and the lawyers are going to win. No offense, Mr. Novel, but...
No offense to Mr. Bennett and your firm.
But this agreement says the parties to this interlocal agreement, I'm reading from it, agree that the Hamilton County School Board shall own the facilities. It starts off pretty clear. So you're going to have maybe a legal argument, maybe it's going to be not a long one, but so I'm asking for you to instruct the SSBC to budget for A, the cost of building new buildings, B, the cost of buying buildings, or C, the cost of a legal dispute. How much is that going to cost so that they can give you an accurate budget and give the town an accurate budget to consider when they decide if this is something they want to get involved in and if we want to spend our town money on that. Dr. Friedl's a lawyer. He should be able to put together a budget.
Charlie,
Thank you.
Yes.
there's a resolution on the agenda tonight to do that.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Anyone else? John, we got
To
a...
respond to that, I can respond very quickly. How do you feel about that?
Let's save it, if you don't mind. I mean, because everybody's only supposed to have one shot at 3 minutes during this time.
That's fine.
I'm sorry. Anyone else like to address the council? Yes, sir.
Ray LaLiberte, 209 Pinehurst Lane. I'm not a particularly suspicious person, but my suspicions have been aroused by the question that I never heard asked, and it was therefore never referenced as any part of any communication. If it has happened, I would love to be just informed about it, and that's okay. I haven't been everywhere that I might like to be.
Is this
I'm
about
trying to figure
school?
out what problem we're trying to solve.
Is this about school?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize, I should
No.
have said that. I just don't understand the problem that we're trying to solve. I'm a problem solver. I'm a teacher, actually. It's what I think I teach is problem solving. And so you figure out what it is you have, and then you figure out what the problem is, and then you try to put those together in some kind of way that will allow something to occur that's going to give you a more beneficial result. And I have to admit that I think that I have misheard, or have not heard at all, the complaint that we're attempting to put a Band-Aid on by all of this information about the school. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am? I'm sorry. Yes.
I'm Rebecca Miller. I'm a resident of 16 Whispering Pines Drive. I live in the town limits and I vote. I have a couple of questions and possibly some comments if I have time. The first question I would like to ask is whether the town council has hired any legal counsel to represent the viability committee, and if so, who is that person and what have they been paid?
Okay. It's not a back and forth, but I can let...
This is an opportunity to ask questions of the council.
The answer is no.
Has the...
And Phil, correct me if I'm wrong.
There's been no payment that I know of any outside counsel at this point in time. There's been no expenditure of my fees for any costs other than my normal representation of the town. So there's been no expenditure from me going to Memphis or back in connection with the school liability committee, because I did that on my own to visit my son.
Does that answer your question?
It wasn't a question directed at Mr. Novelet at all.
Did you get your...
No, I was just, the question was, had council been hired to represent the viability committee? Was the first question. The second question being, has the town council hired counsel to look into the possibility of acquiring the buildings by litigation?
No.
No.
That I'm aware of. Amy, are you
No.
aware of any?
I also
We
noticed
don't have a
that
report yet, so there's...
Valerie
I'll wait on
Speakman
that.
was at the meeting on Thursday night with Hamilton County, and I didn't know if the council had any role in inviting her to the meeting or why she was there. The council for Memphis,
No.
or actually for Arlington, I believe, general counsel for Arlington.
No.
All right, as far as comments, I appreciate that council allowing people to come and make comments. I wanted to address briefly what I think is some good and valuable work that the Viability Committee has done over the past several months. They've spent lots of hours gathering facts and information about the schools. It's clear that they're committed to helping the students in this community. I think they've accomplished two pretty important things. One, I think they have gotten a conversation started in the community, which I think is wonderful. I think they've also, to some extent, gotten the attention of the Hamilton County School Board and the superintendent, which I also think is a valuable result. Even with that, I think our community is very unique in that we have students attending our schools from 3 interrelated communities, but not students that live in one town. Not one town that can create its own school district and have all its students go to that school. And for that reason, our factual circumstances don't fit the framework set forth in Tennessee law for creating a municipal school district. And that's why the committee has uncovered so many obstacles to creating that district. It's recently become clear that it's going to be a very expensive proposition to do this, given that Hamilton County School Board has made it clear that they're not going to give up the buildings without litigation, which is going to be an expensive and I think likely unsuccessful effort on the part of the town. They've made it clear that they intend to continue to allow the Walden students and the unincorporated Hamilton County students to attend school in those buildings. And I think that the council should truly consider the fact that moving forward this proposition makes the students that live in the town limits the clear losers. They won't be able to go to school in the buildings that they've been going to school in, and they'll have to have their own district. They won't have as many choices because they won't be able to attend the magnet schools. I think what moving forward this process creates a detriment to the students that live in the town more than anybody else in the community. And you are tasked with representing the citizens of the town. I think that is an important consideration. I don't think we should abandon the goal of improving the education of the community, but I think that you need to change your focus. I think it's time to pivot. I think it's time to pursue a path that's less divisive in the community and definitely less expensive. In doing that, we don't need to waste the efforts that they've made. They've gathered valuable information. I think we take the information they gather. I think you harness the energy that's been created. I think you take that information to Hamilton County. I think you use it to make improvements in the school that can be made through our current system. And I think it takes a thoughtful leader to look at what's happened and to change your path to reach the same goal. And I would encourage you to do that. I think that it would be important to think about something that Councilman Landrum proposed months ago, would be to create a different committee that would look at what we can do within our system. Let's stop fighting this. Let's stop trying to fit our community, which is a square peg, into this round hole, because we just don't fit the framework for creating this kind of district. And I would just encourage the council to consider what Councilman Landrum has said before and his work within our system.
Thank you, ma'am.
May I say something?
I'm sorry?
May I say something in response?
Yeah, do you want to ask her a question? Do you want me to have her come up?
No, she doesn't need to. This is just quick, that I think we ought to all take a breath and recognize that it's, the questions that Ms. Miller asked were questions that I've had as well, and I've been to council meetings, all of them, and listened to recordings, and there are just questions that we ought to have, and we should expect people to ask those questions, and they should expect to have us listen to them and answer them without them feeling, without there being any defensiveness on our part or on their part. And and answer their questions in the spirit that we hope exists, even in a controversial issue like this, even if they're asked in a mean spirit. We change the tone by the way we respond to all this. So it's time for us to start healing, and I really appreciate that. Because this is tough, and the questions are hard, and there are more questions that can't be answered, that can be answered about this moving forward, especially on the legal side. Yeah, by a group of people sitting here. We have one attorney up here. That's it.
Okay. Would anyone else like? Yes, sir.
Marco Perez, 919 Kentucky Avenue. I feel like every once in a while when I read the papers, and we should know that you guys read the papers, somebody needs to stand up and speak up again against a misconception. And the misconception that I read in the paper is that there's two sides, as Roy Exum said. There's the public school side, where all the parents of Signal Mountain want to separate, and there's the private school individuals who don't want to separate. So I stand up once again to say, as a public school parent of 3 girls who are currently at Signal Mountain Middle and High School, I am opposed to the separation. We do thank the committee. It seems that the rhetoric, although the committee tries to reassure us is unbiased, often appears biased. Maybe we ourselves are biased to read it that way. But for instance, I'll give you even comments from tonight. Regarding the legal issue, Dr. Friedl responded, whether or not we will be able to get the buildings, and I don't have the exact quote, is still to be determined. We've got 2 sides to the argument, so on and so forth. So I, sitting there, hear one thing. We, the committee, are one side of the argument, and Hamilton County Department of Education is the other side of the argument. Then I think, wait, that doesn't sound unbiased to me. That sounds like we sided with one argument. That sounds like we're looking for his own quotes in different newspapers, including the Signal Mountain. As I read them, Dr. Friedl, I read them as when I hear fact finding, I hear we're up here looking at facts, but his own statements as the chair of the committee say we're looking at whether or not this is viable and we should proceed. Well, as a citizen, or as a resident of the city, I would like to find out whether or not we should proceed. That to me is fact finding, not whether or not we are able to legally proceed and have the battle, and therefore it seems to me biased. And even as we've said, sometimes the comments or the suggestions made by the Viability Committee, for those of us who watch the meetings, seem like they are leaning to push this town into the argument that we are looking to segregate our schools from Hamilton County. So in that, I do hope it's unbiased. I do hope that the report that is given to us is a report that looks at the 30,000-foot view as to whether or not this is where we should proceed. But it does appear to many of us, both from what we read in the papers, obviously, as there are 2 sides, of which my side doesn't seem to be represented at all, to the arguments we hear as to whether or not we will prevail, that there is a bias, and I do recommend that that be reviewed by the town council, and if that bias is present within the Viability Committee, that people who would counter one side of the argument would be incorporated before the final report in order to make sure that we have an unbiased report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
This has nothing to do with the school stuff, but there is a white 2004 F-150 parked there blocking the entrance to the fire department. They can't get the fire trucks in there. So if whoever has that, pull it down into the gravel out there by the EMS building.
Bill Trohannis.
I have no idea.
Bill Trohannis. Mayor Walden coming here. Hey, will the newspapers please take note?
Mark first.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to, that'd be a great place to end, but anybody else like to address the council? Thank you all very much. Next we go on to resolutions. First resolution is resolution number 2017-43, a resolution recognizing and celebrating October 18th, 2017 as Arbor Day within the town of Signal Mountain, Tennessee. And hopefully after tonight and tomorrow we'll have as many trees on October 18th as we do right now. Boyd, you want to, it is what it is?
It is what it is. Annual resolution, our tree board is very active and participates with schools, plants trees on the school, excuse me, school properties. And this is the day that they designated as our recognition so that they can coordinate those efforts with the schools.
And we are designated a tree city.
For how many years running now?
I think at least 6.
6 years. 10. And our tree board does phenomenal work. And the sub board to that, which is the, help me out, Hemlock, right? They come up through your board as well? Yes? Are you on that, Ed?
Yes.
The Hemlock? Yeah, right.
It's the Hemlock Conservation Task Force.
Right. Yeah. They do great work. Thank you very much. Can I get a motion? Motion.
Second.
Did you get that, Carol?
I did.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Resolution carries. I hate red mistake. Next, we have resolution number 2017-45, resolution authorizing the town manager to submit an application for the TML Risk Management Pool Driver Safety Matching Grant Program. Boyd?
I'm sorry.
Is that not it?
I have a different number on this one.
Okay.
I have 2017-44.
Okay.
Is it 45?
Yeah, and the next one's 40. Yeah, so it's just,
It's misnumbered on there, my apologies.
can I just,
Yeah, go ahead.
resolution number 2017-44, resolution authorizing the town manager to submit an application for the TML Risk Management Pool Driver Safety Matching Grant Program. Boyd?
This is a program we apply to each year through our insurer. It pays for annual driver's license check for all our employees, and it also provides some funds on a reimbursement basis to offset some of the costs for the GPS units we have on town vehicles.
What's it cost us?
It doesn't cost us anything. These are things that we would be doing anyway, so they assist us in
Matching. Okay.
They're offset costs that we would already be spending. They spend, provides 100% of the cost for the driver's checks, and then provides a portion towards the GPS unit. So we're already spending what they would consider the matching. Right. Funds we're already spending.
Can I have a motion? Second. I need it first.
Oh, I thought you said you had a motion. I'm sorry.
Bob and Dick. Any discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution carries. Next resolution, resolution 2017-45. Mayor, did you fix that? All right. Resolution confirming the availability of matching funds for an application to the 2018 TDOT Transportation Alternative Grant Program by the town of Signal Mountain. Boyd?
This is similar to the resolution we passed a few weeks ago. It's just a preliminary approval in that we're applying for a grant to put the sidewalk system through Town Hall and provide lit crosswalks at James Boulevard and the highway. We're actually applying for 2 different grants for the same project to optimize our chances. If we get one, we would then qualify for the other. This is just stating that if we are awarded the grant and we choose to accept it, that the town has funds available to participate in the grant. That's it. There's no obligations. It is an 80% grant.
And how much do we assume our 20%?
Do you have the estimate on the total construction?
I don't have the final, it was around, just the construction alone was 300,000.
60,000.
Project is 300.
That's like a sidewalk.
Yeah.
So 60,000 would be our portion.
Right.
That's not including our engineering and our NEPA and our.
So it might be a little more than that. Okay, and we have that.
So when would that, when would we know that? When would we have to make that money available?
I think the deadline for the other one, the CMAQ that we had already authorized last month is due Monday. The application is due Monday, and I believe the application for this grant is due next month.
I'm not sure what the turnaround and award time is.
I mean, when does something would start? I guess that's what I'm asking.
This would be
Maybe in the next budget cycle.
easily.
Okay.
Is it possible that this is one of those where the grant might be awarded, but then we wouldn't actually see the funds until many other stipulations are met, just like with the Old Town project?
Right, with the engineering and design and all that would have to be done. These are preliminary applications based on estimates from the development district and other projects we've done. So until they're awarded, we won't go into actual design and engineering. So there's an extensive process associated with it after funds are made available.
And it doesn't commit future councils.
Correct. Until it's awarded and this council takes action to accept it.
Okay.
And at that time, we'll have hard numbers on projected costs.
And we're not obligated.
There's no obligation until that happens. This is just something that gets the ball rolling and makes us eligible for consideration.
I'll move forward.
Well, just one other thing, just because we have a different group of citizens, there's an ongoing look into sidewalks and making Signal Mountain a more sidewalk and bicycle-friendly city, but it's a long process. And this is just part of that process that could benefit us down the road, right?
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Any other discussion on the issue? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next we have, sorry, I gotta get to the front of this. Is this the double up?
These next two are both double up, so yes.
Next two are, okay. Resolution number 2017-46. An initial resolution authorizing the incurrence of indebtedness by the town of Signal Mountain, Tennessee by the execution of a loan agreement with the Public Building Authority of the City of Clarksville, Tennessee, an amount not to exceed $3 million to provide funding for certain public work projects in the town and to fund the incidental and necessary expenses related thereto. Boyd?
This is a resolution we actually took up at the work session. Speaking with the folks at the bond fund, they've asked that we bring it back to table for action again at this regular meeting. And in conjunction, go ahead and take action on the next resolution, which basically approves the loan subject to the stipulations of this one. Once the initial is passed, we'll advertise it. There's a 20-day period in which someone could provide, just lost the word, a petition, thank you, petition in opposition. So after that happens, with the next resolution in place, that time passes, the petition is not presented, then we can go ahead and move forward with the loan.
So basically, this is funding the new fire station.
Correct.
And just so
and the equipment.
correct, and so the public's aware, it's been said before, but we actually have to take out a separate financial vehicle for this, because if for some reason Windtree and Fox Run at some point, what do you call it? De-annex, if it's under a separate funding mechanism, then it would be charged back to the folks in those areas. We can't mix it with other funding mechanisms. Is that accurate, Phil?
Yes, sir. And the resolution itself is simply dealing with a public building authority. When we're talking about that, this is something here within the state that allows us to be able to issue these bonds. It's a local entity in the state of Tennessee that authorizes that type of fund. The resolution you're talking about here is talking about unless 20% or at least 10% of the registered voters in the town object to this within 20 days, then this would go into effect. And that's the reason for that. You don't want a new fire hall here in the town that would be at least subject to the folks who benefit from that having to pay for a portion of that. You can vote against it. I don't know that that would be a wise decision, but that's out there.
We are obligated by the annexation agreement to build this fire hall.
Correct.
Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
So the term is fixed rate loan?
Yeah, it's a very good rate.
Fixed rate loan, what?
7 years?
2 point something?
I want to say 2.4.
I thought it was
2.749. And it works like a line of credit on the drawdown.
And it's 2.7 for
7 years?
7 years.
7 years, and
And then the balance comes due unless we want it.
It's ballooned in 7 years.
Balloons in 7 years.
They reevaluate it in 7 years and reestablish
The rate.
what the rate would be for the
And
next
so
7
it's
years.
fixed rate for 7 years.
Right.
But not for the, it's a 20-year loan.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
We have a first and second. Any more discussion on the issue? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Resolution carries. I'm signing 2 of these, right? Carol?
Yes, sir. And 2 of the next one also.
Yes, ma'am. Next is, it is tied to this. Resolution 2017-47, resolution authorizing a loan pursuant to a loan agreement between the Town of Signal Mountain, Tennessee and the Public Building Authority of the City of Clarksville, Tennessee, in the principal amount of not to exceed $3 million, authorizing the execution and delivery of such loan agreement and other documents relating to said loan, approving the issuance of a bond by such public building authority, providing for the application of the proceeds of said loan and the payment of such indebtedness, consenting to the assignment of the town's obligation under such loan agreement, and certain other matters. Boyd?
This is the resolution that authorizes the actual loan agreement. I would ask that, since we're doing these at the same time, that any motion to approve be subject to fulfilling obligations associated with Resolution 2017-46, which would require us to advertise it within 20 days, and at that point, execute the loan agreement as.
Can somebody make that motion right now so we get it ready?
So it's a contingency in a sense, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
We were all looking at you.
Basically, he said that make a motion to approve the subject to fulfilling the obligations of resolution 2017-46.
That's what you said. All right, we got a first.
Second.
Okay, Dan has the second on that discussion.
I think it's reasonable to ask, what would the vehicle, if someone did want to protest, that they didn't want the fire hall built, what would their method be?
They have to present a petition to the town council with at least 10% of the registered voters in the town. Has to be filed with a recorder within 20 days from the date of publication.
And I'm not sure when it will go in. We'll give notice to the paper tomorrow. It'll go in the paper a day or two after that, and then 20 days will start. There's no, to my knowledge, no requirement of formality, but it would be a matter of petitioning 10% of the registered voters and ultimately verification of those signatures.
Do 10% of registered voters live in Mitchell?
I don't think so.
And if I could, I think in addition, it doesn't get advertised for the full 20 days. It only gets advertised for a couple of days, and then the time period.
Dan, you good? Anybody else? Phil, you've reviewed everything and you're comfortable with legal issues associated with the documents?
Yes, and specifically the whereas provisions in the document here talk about what it's to be used for, and it's to be for the purpose of acquisition, construction, and equipping of the new fire stations, fire trucks, and related fire equipment. Can't be used for just general funding here in the town. There's a provision in this document that talks about arbitrage certification. The town has to certify that it will not use it for other projects. This is the only project it can be used for. And so that funding is required by funding requirements.
So we can't, there's excess in that $3 million, we can't use it for anything else?
It's got to be used for those purposes that are stated in this document.
I'm just laughing at excess
Yeah,
in a construction project.
That's true. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm sorry. Passes. Resolution number 2017-48, resolution authorizing the purchase of 12 routers, antennas, and compliance security software for mobile tablet computers from Source Inc. for the amount of $12,996.88 for the use of the police department, and authorizing the town manager to execute any necessary documents in connection with the purchase. Boyd?
This is a budget item as part of the project to put mobile computers in the police vehicles. The equipment was bid out separately. We did put it out to bid. This is, as it says, the routers, antennas, and security software associated with it. The following resolution is for the tablets and mounting hardware. So this is a project that we discussed extensively during the budget process and is funded in our current budget.
And that looks like it came in slightly.
Just a little bit. There are some other associated costs, but these, between the two, one's a little lower, one's a little lower. Overall budget for this right now is doing very well. We're in pretty good shape on it.
I got a total with 217.49 of $60,058.86. So we're under budget on that?
Yes, we are. Again, there's some other related expenses, but overall, I expect the project as a whole will be under budget.
And the funds are budgeted?
Correct.
Can I get a motion?
Second.
Dr. Spaulding, Amy Speak, second. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution carries. Resolution number 2017-48, resolution, oh, no, that was it, wasn't it? Signed the wrong one. Yeah, sorry. Resolution 2017-49, resolution authorizing the purchase of 12 mobile tablet computers and mounting hardware from Mobile Demand for the amount of $47,061.98 for use by the police department, and authorizing the town manager to execute any necessary documents in connection with the purchase.
I'll move for approval.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes. Wow.
Well,
police computers, we got claps for police computers.
If you like that, wait till you hear this one.
This is the next one. I have to read the entire thing, unfortunately, so. Resolution number 2017-50, a resolution authorizing the town manager to purchase one Pierce Enforcer 1500 GPM pumper from Pierce Manufacturing for an amount not to exceed $551,439 and that's it, sorry, $551,439 to be used for the fire department for the town of Signal Mountain, and authorizing the town manager to execute any necessary documents in connection with this purchase. Boyd?
This also is a budgeted item in connection with the new fire station. The build time on this vehicle is about 11 and a half months, so we go ahead and get it in the works. In addition to that, this purchase is through the Houston-Galveston Area Council of Governments Purchasing Cooperative. We bought our last fire apparatus through that mechanism as well. Currently, they have a program that if you order a vehicle and you prepay, they provide a 100% performance bond to protect your investment, but provide a very significant discount on the vehicle. That program is going to be changing within the month. So they made us aware of that and recommended that we, not only because of build time, but because of the change in the program, that we want to go ahead and do this. The price of the vehicle doesn't change because it's a contract price through this purchasing cooperative, but we would not save nearly as much if we don't go ahead and move on this. Prepaid, and again, they provide 100% performance bond on the delivery of the vehicle, so there's not a significant exposure associated with that. Something we normally would not do, but with that performance bond associated with it and the significant savings that we provide, we use this mechanism to purchase.
Is that savings reflected in this number here?
Correct.
Chief, is this for the new fire department?
Yes.
Okay, so that's going to be the primary apparatus out there.
What is the savings, Boyd?
Eric, you call that out.
What's
This total savings for the prepay?
with using the prepay, it's right at 26,000 with the HGAC contract and the prepay option, it's over $35,000. So that's what the savings are. We did this on a ladder truck, same process. The company that we're purchasing from, I don't have any problem. I have a lot of history prepaying with them to incur the savings, and they build about 1,900 fire trucks a year. They're solid companies.
Did we bid this? Did it need to be bid?
No, that's the process of using the purchasing cooperative. They've already done the bid process and certified that it meets Tennessee requirements. And in the past, we haven't been able to better those deals.
Okay, so, but legally we're,
Yes, that is an exception to the law here in the state of Tennessee if we use the purchasing agreement or purchasing cooperative here under our current municipal purchasing law.
I was just going to ask you, this pumper or this engine is a little different than the one we currently have. And I thought you might be interested in explaining what's different about this one and why it's different.
One of the things that's a little bit different about it, our current frontline engine that we run, today, every day, is, you'll notice the newer one's shorter. It's about 6 feet shorter. So I actually have a little bit more compartment space the way it's designed, but it's shorter, and we've done that for a reason to, we don't have a lot of straight roads here. And length makes a big difference in trying to get around town, so we designed this one to be a little bit shorter.
So this one might be more suitable if he's located here.
That's
And the other one
located out?
Yeah, as we move through the process, we've actually already started talking to some of the officers and everything about, what's going to be the best fit. The other one's only 4 years old, so it's not like it's an old truck, so. But, accessibility, some of the older streets and everything, it's kind of an issue.
Thank you. Does that answer your-
The ladder truck, if somebody asked, well, ladder truck's just as long, I'll just mention that the way it's designed and the way its front end is designed is actually more maneuverable than the engine is.
Anybody else have any questions for Chief? All right, we have a first and a second, I believe, correct? Okay.
First.
Second.
I'm sorry, who was the first?
Dr. Spalding? Councilwoman Speak for second. Further discussion on this? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Resolution carries.
Are we going to dispose potentially of the reserve, what is now the reserve engine, or have?
The plan right now is to keep our reserves. That helps us in our ISO rating. Plus, when one runs down for maintenance or something like that, we'll have them. So
we'll have two engines and an engine in reserve. Yes.
I do want to go make everyone aware that our city manager and our chief and I went down last Thursday. Was it Thursday? When was it, Eric? Thursday. We met, I asked for a meeting with the county mayor again. We met down at his office last Thursday and met with some of their folks. And, because really we've got two entities building fire stations less than a mile apart as far as the crow flies. To see if there, once again, I know it's been discussed once, but just to see if there was anything we could do to possibly work together, offered, to work out a deal where we would cover Walden and the areas that they're supposed to cover if they take the money and go out and go to, help me with the road. What's the road where they're on now? They have the other station out Sawyer. On Sawyer Park Pike, and maybe put something into that, so potentially better coverage for the mountain. But we looked and went through several different iterations, trying to come to some resolutions, because to me it's a little silly to build two fire stations there. But unfortunately, we haven't heard back from our suggestions, and I just don't think it was worth a try. I think it needed to be tried again, but I don't think we're going to get anything positive back. Is that fair, Bob? Would you like to add anything to that?
There's a continuation of discussions that have been had in the past, and whether anything will come of it, certainly.
We had to try.
Sure.
Anything else on that? All right. Next, we have end of resolutions. Good. Resolution number 2017-51, a resolution directing the town manager and town attorney to establish the estimated costs associated with efforts to acquire Hamilton County school facilities located in the town of Signal Mountain and the cost of constructing like facilities if necessary.
I will, for the most part, refer to Mr. Randall, but he contacted me last week, and after the meeting at the high school, felt that it appropriate to bring this to council for discussion, and the mechanism by which that could make sure that happened was a resolution, and he asked that I draft that. That's what is before you, and now for Councilmember Landry.
Yeah, there's really not much else that needs to be said. I too appreciate the work that, is Dr. Friedl gone? I appreciate the work that they've been done, and I feel that I believe, and I've believed from the beginning, that we did them a disservice in the order that we did things, and some of the ill will that Dr. Friedl is feeling, and I think, Amy, you've expressed some as well, from the public, could have been avoided if we had done this in a different direction. But we didn't. And so we're at this place now. So the question that needs to be answered is the one that Charlie Ploss asked, and I've asked from the beginning, and many people have asked, is what are we willing to pay? And I understand legal positioning. That's of course the way it works. But there's a cost with that. And I forget the gentleman's name who spoke earlier, who was saying we should push on. I don't know if he's an attorney, but I was, I didn't want to hector him, but if he's an attorney, he wouldn't do it for free either. There's a cost, and it's not going to be an easy thing. And we have heard, so I should probably stop, because what I don't want to get into is there's a whole lot of stuff off in the weeds, even from the presentation that the county made the other night. And some of that stuff I thought was unnecessary, and I wish they had handled it differently. But this one question is a simple question. If they're not willing to give it up, we either have to fight them or build our own schools. And if there is something that someone on this council knows, and this is not in the purview of the SSBC because we set it up that way, if there is something that someone knows that can paint this elephant in the room so that we go, oh, it's a nice elephant and it's not really a problem, that needs to come out now, or we need to vote to establish a cost estimate. So that's why I asked to have this written.
Okay. Any comments from everybody?
So this establishes a cost, because I keep hearing costs associated with the committee that we had one committee come to us, ask for consideration and having our own governmental committee. Everybody volunteered. I'm not aware of any cost to that committee other than whatever the incidental trip cost was to Memphis. So I keep hearing how expensive this committee was to put together, but yet I'm not aware of any cost for that. How much do you feel like this would cost to put together? How much would it cost for us to get an estimate of how much it costs?
Right. Well, I've mentioned in our little town to Hannah Rogers on the soccer fields last week, and she said, I'm glad you guys are doing that. We could help you out with that, because we work with towns that have these costs. There are established costs in existence. So this is just directing the town manager and the town attorney to gather those numbers to bring them back to the council.
If I might, one of the things that we discussed in doing this, I think you have to understand on the front end that that's really what you're talking about, is looking at existing examples that we can draw from and look at this similar situation occurred in City A, and this is how much their legal fees were. This school was just built in City B. This is what it looks like, and this is how much it costs. The idea of designing and all of that is not what we're talking about. It's just looking for good examples that we can draw some degree of reasonable information from.
Well, part of this says cost of constructing new facilities should such efforts fail. So,
you're looking at the cost of the legal battle to acquire the facilities, and if that should fail, if it's undertaken, what would it cost to build new schools?
How do we know there's going to be a legal battle?
It's been made clear that there's going to be a legal battle. That's what if you know something that would lead me to believe there's not going to be a legal battle, I'd like to hear that.
Okay.
Now.
Any other comments?
I would just add that I agree that obviously that's something that we would need to look at, but I keep saying over and over and over, Dan, if you would be okay waiting on this till we at least can have a report. We haven't, the committee hasn't, they're 3 weeks away from submitting a report. There is no harm in letting them finish. There's no cost to the town in letting them finish. And there's really no harm in waiting to put this.
What?
I personally, go ahead.
I just think it's,
Is there harm in having them do this?
Yes,
What is that?
I think we've got plenty going on that this may be a waste of time.
The council's trying,
Do you want me to expand on that?
sure, I'd love to.
We've got a water RFP, we've got sewer RFP, we've got fire stations, we've got a bunch of stuff that staff's working on. So now we're going to take our staff attorney and our town manager off some of those things that have been dragging, the old town roads and everything else. And we're going to say, hey, we need you to go spend your time and put this together. When I think it's very legitimate chance that once this report comes out, it's not going to go forward from there. I have not heard anything. We made some very sharp and detailed reasons to move forward as a council. And I've heard nothing that allows us the ability to incorporate all three areas together to make it happen. I think we were pretty...
What are the 3 areas that you're referring to?
Had to be financially, first of all, it had to improve the quality of education for students. I haven't seen the report, so I don't know if it's going to or not. Has to be able to include everyone on the mountain, everybody who currently attends all areas. That's been clear from the beginning. It's been said multiple times in these meetings. Has to be financially viable. I'm not supporting this unless we can get to those answers. I haven't heard anything in these SSBC meetings where I'm comfortable with anything that they've put together that we're going to be able to include all those areas in there. Now, I haven't seen the report yet, so I can't tell you. But if that report comes out and says, hey, here's some quality issues, here's the budget, and the budget works, but we don't have an answer or a mechanism or an avenue to get to inclusion of everybody on the mountain, I can't support it. And that's been said from the beginning. So if we wait 3 weeks instead of tying up their time and effort and see when that report comes out, if there is an avenue mechanism, then at that time, it's time to look at if we have to even talk about the buildings. Which I think at that time, if the council, after we've talked to the community, had open meetings where the SSBC lays its findings out, and this council thinks it's still a good idea to move forward, that's when the buildings become an issue. That's why we kept that out from them. I have serious doubts that they're going to be able to do that. So we're putting them to work doing something that we may never have to get to. But at least we have a great report that says here's some potential quality issues, which I committed to sitting down with Dr. Johnson and saying, hey, this is what our report found. Can you help us? So now we go, hey, okay, maybe they'll give us the buildings. No, they won't give us the buildings. Are we going to get a legal battle? Are we going to have to build them from scratch? Will we just lease them? Or, you know, I mean, there's so many different opportunities there. Why put the effort of the town manager when we may not even get there?
Because the third leg of your stool is financial viability, and this council has to decide, and we haven't talked about this, we have not talked about this, it has been pushed, it's separate from the SSBC,
Right.
so its timing has nothing to do with that report, because the SSBC, excuse me, could come forward and say, give us a report that makes it look like it's a great idea, we still have to do this. And second, and I don't mean this, this is dangerous what I'm about to say, even if the majority of the town wanted it and we can't afford it, it doesn't matter. But people can't know if they want it. We can't know if we want it, if we can afford it. And this is a cost that can at least be established an estimate.
And I think we'll have plenty of time once the report comes out to go down that process if this council feels it's where to go. I think we have too many projects we've got to get out at this point. I think there's too many different directions that this could go.
I think there's nothing
I mean,
more.
I've had conversations with county folks that said they're willing to talk to us about leasing it. So, who knows?
When do we get that information?
After the report comes out.
I see no reason to wait for the report.
But Dan, you have been, this whole process has been about slowing down, and now it's like, it sounds to me like speeding up. So I don't think anybody's debating on whether or not we actually do this as a council. I think it's just, let's get the report. We've had a meeting with Hamilton County that was representative of Hamilton County. We've had 2 attorneys that come up that represent Hamilton County. So let's just get the report and then let's revisit it. I'm all for looking at this. I'm not opposed to it. I'm opposed to the timing. So we're slowing down. That's what we've been asked to do. So let's get the report.
Please.
When the report is issued, John's clients, when the report is issued, say by the end of the month, what are we going to do? Are we going to have a meeting and review that as a council, or is that going to be distributed to each of us individually, and then we read that report and then come together and talk about it as a council?
I'm talking.
I'll let the question say, how are we going to handle it?
I'm talking for me. We have talked in previous meetings amongst us as a council that there's potential that we read this thing and we get to an agenda meeting and we say, you know what, can't happen, goes away. There's a meeting, there's the opportunity that I see where it comes to the council and there's some intriguing stuff in there, but boy, there's some bad hurdles. But the information's good enough that we have a couple public meetings and get some input and put the information out there so that people can see what this committee's done. There's potential to say, hey, this is really intriguing from the council, and we need to start having public meetings and allowing the SSBC to have multiple public meetings where then it's time for the feedback, the back and forth, because we now have the facts on the table.
Wait.
I'm still hearing people say teachers' retirements aren't, we won't, you know, if we were to do our own.
I need to clarify
ridiculous.
something though. I want to hear the rest. The SSBC would have the public meetings, or the council would have the public meetings?
I would say they both joined. We allow them to present their report. They created the report.
That's my question.
Yeah, then
How is the committee going to present their report to us?
To us? Oh, I think we should have a separate meeting where they have a public meeting where they take their report and we walk through it and we ask John Friedl any questions we want. And we make it public so everybody else can see it.
And then, there'll be some time for us
We've got
individually.
plenty of time. There is no timeline on this.
I would propose too, let's talk about that at our next work session, exactly how we want it.
I mean, there's tons of options how we can go forward. What I'd be absolutely against is this has to go into a public forum if there's any inkling that this council wants to move forward. We cannot, and I will not, I mean, I'll walk off the stage, but we can't go, hey, this is a great report, we're going right to referendum. There's no way. We've committed the whole time that we would get public opinion and have these meetings once this report came out.
Because there are 2 elephants in this room. They're not just this one. The other one is the district question. And that's not, and according to Dr. Friedl, that is not going to be addressed by the SBC.
What district question? I'm confused by that.
Whether or not Hamilton County could still continue to operate the schools here.
How you draw the district and guarantee that district is a legal entity.
He told me, I thought he said it was in there.
No,
He said, no, it's not.
he said that's not part of the issue they're addressing. And to me, that's a real question that I'm addressing. So we need.
We meet tomorrow, or not tomorrow, Wednesday, so I'm going to clarify that because that's not my
Can you put that down
understanding.
too?
Yeah, definitely. That's a big, you're exactly right, that's a big
Can you
thing.
put that down too? I'm sorry.
So anyway,
Back,
I think, Dan, I agree. I think we're going to have to address this question one way or the other. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
The question of when do we have to go. We've set up a process, and what I'd like to do is recommend that we adhere to the process and get the answer from the committee at that point. And then I think that answer or as we find our collective answer to that report, then we decide where we go from there. That's kind of what I'm.
Well,
I guess that was, I mean, that's the point I was making earlier, that I haven't heard the district piece. I haven't heard in any of this where there's a good response to this.
And I don't think we're going to get a question about that answers the district question either.
Well.
but that's not this question, though. That's not.
No,
what
that's
we're
not
talking
this
about.
question. They have addressed 4 or 5 options they said that it could not potentially work. But when they addressed those options, and Phil was in the meeting, it was during one of the legal discussions, and it came up multiple times in Memphis, that here are the 4 or 5 ways you can make it work. But I wasn't real comfortable with any of it.
I haven't heard a proposal yet.
And they were supposed to, in fact, it was said in one of the meetings there, they were supposed to, because they identified these 4 or 5, and correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, they identified these 4 or 5 reasons, and then they were supposed to say, this is how this one works, this is what the results would be, this is who could be included and who couldn't be included, and that's how you get it done. Was that what we heard?
Yes.
Okay. So I think they're addressing somewhat, it may not, I'm like you, I haven't heard anything that gives me the warm and fuzzy that we're able to clear.
And interlocal agreement is not the answer to me, so we'll.
Right.
So
we have 3 weeks.
There's no reason to rush into this. We'll get
It's,
the answer.
this isn't rushing. This should have been done at the beginning.
But we set up a process. There's nothing wrong with the process. If we got it out of order, so be it. But we're adhering to the process. We'll get this answer, and we can get the answers as we go down the road. And I think that's fine. And that's what I would recommend that we do. I would object to this.
I mean, we are 3 weeks away, hopefully, from getting this thing out there.
Well, yes and no, but you mentioned maybe the SSVC continuing to do, and so I heard that, and I also heard we don't need to do this because we're too busy.
Yeah.
That doesn't
It's a
mean it
waste of
won't be
time.
done.
It's not viable. If we get this report and says it
Get
can't be
paid.
done, that's why we made it a viability, so we get the facts on the table.
The
Because
report
it's
is
really, I've
not,
not heard from a pro group. I've not heard a pro group be as vocal as the anti-group that's out there. I'm perfectly fine that one of the solutions is, once this comes out, let's create a pro group and an anti-group. Let's have the debate. But we may never get to the point where we need to do that.
the SSVC has stated they are not coming to us with a suggestion for or against.
Correct.
They're not going to come to us and suggest we not do this.
Correct.
Not only is that clear in their form, it's also clear in the function of what has happened so far by listening to the meetings. And so that's one point. The second point is it's not the SSVC's job to determine what we should be determining by this resolution. That's our job. We don't have to wait for them. So that's why, Dick, I think this is a matter of just putting off the inevitable that we should have already done, which we can do it now. And we're not asking them to get drawings made, to talk to architects. We're asking them to get basic estimates of what legal fees, No, because there's precedents for other towns that have done this and had legal fees. That precedents exist, and we can get costs and bring it before the council. So that's there. So when the SSVC presents their unbiased information, we then have a concrete cost that we can refer to. I think we need those concurrently, and we should have had this one at the beginning.
We just happen to disagree, and that's fine. There's a resolution. Is anybody going to make a motion for the resolution?
I'll make a motion, we pass it.
Is there a second? Carol, what do we do if there's no second?
It fails because the motion fails if there's no second.
All right. Motion fails.
You know, normally this goes to an agenda meeting, we discuss it, and then it's brought before the council. So this, in my opinion, is not the typical way we would introduce this, is it?
If a tree fell on, which by the way, when my wife left a few minutes ago, a tree fell on my daughter's house. That's what that was about.
Very sorry.
And so
Is she okay?
Yeah, they're all okay, but she had
Is
to
it
go
up
get
here?
there. Yeah, over on the, yeah. But anyway, if a tree fell on one of our fire trucks tonight, or the day before we had a meeting, okay, we wouldn't wait until we had a work session to talk about needing to replace that. It would come before council. Maybe that's a bad example, but we would get on it quickly because we had information that was current and that needed to be acted on. I've thought we should do this particular thing for months, and we've talked about this multiple times. I've asked at the meetings, when are we going to talk about the cost? And it keeps getting pushed forward. This time, and I've known, they weren't going to go, sure, you can have the buildings. That was no surprise, but it was a public meeting, and in the public, they made clear what their intentions are. So that's why, Bob, I think now that they've made it clear, it's up to us to decide, at what cost are we willing to continue to pursue this, regardless of what the SSV states, or even regardless of what the majority of citizens want or don't want. It's a matter of budgeting. It's our fiduciary responsibility as council members to know this.
Everything on here needs to be answered. A year ago, I couldn't even have an intelligent conversation about this whole process. It's been a learning evolution, but it's taken a year for me to get educated on this. Yes, these need to be answered, but if we're 3 weeks away from an answer in one step, then these are things that have got to be addressed before we can go further. Now, it's not that they're not good questions. I think the whole process is critical thinking, and that's what we need to be doing, asking hard questions, having critical thinking, and this is certainly another part of that. It's just that the timing of it needs to be about on our next agenda meeting where we specifically have a resolution that we can discuss, and that's...
Would you like to put it on our next agenda meeting for discussion?
I'll think about that. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's very fair.
On the agenda, if I can add, if you don't mind,
Yeah, absolutely.
add that we need to talk about the question I raised about the process of analyzing this thing, because it's going to be an extensive process.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
This is digested very individually and then collectively.
Nothing we're rushing into, and I think this is still going to be several months more of debate and fact finding. So thank you. Good discussion. No ordinances. Number 9, discussion. Anybody in the council have discussion? Item stand. Amy.
Other business, I don't need discussion.
I'm good.
I'm good. Other business. Dan. Amy?
I did want to find out from Loretta, where are we on the paving for James Boulevard?
Currently, we've submitted our last set of comments back to the state, and we're waiting back their answers on those. They were very minor. So hopefully they'll come back with a clean slate and approve this to be advertised.
So we're all done with all the sub-projects, all the sewer, the water, and all that in James Boulevard, or?
No, the water line is still going on. We had we still have some work to do in 2 intersections before we can, move forward with road projects. But the water line is making progress, but we do have to go back to 2 intersections and do the tie-in. So that project is not.
Thank you.
While Loretta said, you said, right down, are you moving in?
This week, moving this week. I was
This
packing
week?
right before the meeting.
Dick, do you have any other? I do. I have something. I want to talk about schools for a second, because there have been a lot of questions on, although I think it was very clear during the turnover meeting from the ad hoc committee and the discussions we had and the structure we decided to put in place, because we knew that this would be a very hot topic, but a worthy topic of discussion and time. And I still feel very strongly about that, and I'm very defensive of the process, because I think the way we're doing it is the right way to do it, to get the facts on the table so we can have a legitimate discussion, regardless of where those facts fall. I still have people that have been very involved in this process. I believe they've been involved, and maybe not so involved, a casual listener, continually asks the question, which is, why are we doing this? All right. I think it's been answered over and over, but I want to reiterate it again. All right. I've done it on social media. I know I've done it at 2 or 3 other meetings. So it's my feeling, and not necessarily the council, but it was pretty much the discussion around the council. They presented a unsustainable model. Our schools are great, in my opinion, and they're great because of the community behind those schools. And I'm not talking about Signal Mountain, the township. I'm talking about Signal Mountain, the mountain. You know, no other time in the state has, that I'm aware of, has a community come and said, hey, we're going to put $10 million of our own money into building a school. This hadn't happened. And it's not happened, as I'm ever aware of, in Hamilton County and or the cities when they had their own separate schools. So there was a love and a desire not only to be able to get our kids to an excellent elementary education, in my opinion, which all 4 of my kids have gone through public schools and gone up here in the mountain. And at a time we could get them through middle school. It's part of the reason we moved up here 20 years ago was because I could get my kids all the way through middle school without having to send them to private yet. And then we were blessed enough to have the folks come together and put the high school together and give us some new middle school. Great stuff. There's been an alarming trend, an unsustainable trend that was pointed out by the ad hoc committee in their turnover, where attendance at the high school is declining. Donations to MEF over the last 3 years have gone down 20%. The county is asking us to cover what I would call basic requirements to keep us at the level of being the best high school we are in the county. We are now paying more than what MEF's bringing in. All right, so your expenses are up here and your revenues are coming down here. So you're going to have to start picking and choosing. Is it the IB that we fund the development for? Is it the STEM lab? Is it the 14 teachers we cover? Where do you make that cut? Do you continue to be as good as you are if you have to make those cuts? That's issue number 1. I think there's a lot of people, and I know people have felt this is a divisive issue, but I think everybody involved in this process wants better education, not only for our kids up here, but for Hamilton County Department of Education. Because their past performance is not a pretty picture, if you look at it and you're honest with it. I want to read you some stats right off the Tennessee State website. They put out a report card every year for every district, and then it's broken down into each school in those districts. All right? They test through the TCAPs, which everybody knows, everybody crams for those things. Last year, they tested 12 different categories. And in the high school, those 12 categories are Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Biology 1, English 2, English 3, U.S. History, Chemistry, Geometry, High School English, High School Math, and High School Science. Those are the 12 categories. And this is on the Tennessee Department of Education website under report cards. In Hamilton County, there is one category out of 12 that, I want to say this properly, there is only one category out of 12 that 50% or greater of the kids are testing at grade level. All right, let that sink in. So 11 of the 12 categories that they test on the state level, Hamilton County Department of Education is failing, in my opinion, because 50% of the kids are testing below their grade level. At Signal Mountain High School, which is the best one statistically through this, on the Tennessee State website, 4 out of the 12 do our students test at or above. Let that sink in. We're the best high school in Hamilton County Department of Education, and only 4 of these categories do our kids test at 50% or better. They went over this at the ad hoc when they turned over. That's one of the things that shocked me the most. We think it's good. I think our elementaries are great. I think our teachers are great. I like our administrators. But Hamilton County has had a problem. I have a new hope with Superintendent Johnson. I've talked to him, I've met with him. I think he's a great guy. I think he's going to bring new energy, new ideas. And we have an open line of communication. And I promised him, and it might be on my ability as a council member, but I promised him that I would sit down with him at those results. And we would try to work through anything we can to see if not only can we identify some things that would help educate our kids better, but would also help educate the other kids in the county. Those are two of the main reasons that this council undertook this. And we knew it would be a long, arduous process. We have 7 very, very good people, 3 or 4 doctorates on the board, just good people. And my intention through the whole process, and I believe Amy's and the other people who have worked on this, is to let the process run its course. There have been several people who are just throwing up roadblocks to stop the process. Just let us run its course. Let's find out what happens. Let's see a better way to hopefully educate our system. If we come up with one thing, if we in any way influence that tax increase in the county that finally passed after 15 years, how many years have gone without a tax increase?
12.
To increase spending in education. We've already done some good, in my opinion. Sorry, a lot of pontificating. We don't have councils, but we don't have public comments right now, but I would be happy to talk to you afterwards. All right?
I would like, is it grade level that you're talking about?
Yes, at grade level. At grade level.
That has a pretty specific meaning.
Yep.
I don't think you're using.
More than happy to see it.
All right.
At grade level, right off the Tennessee website.
The definition, I have a doctorate in education.
I understand. I
The
understand.
definition.
I appreciate it. I'm happy to talk to you about it. Yeah. But 50% is 50%. That means somewhere else in the state, 50% is doing better. Sorry, my pontification, and that went way too long. I apologize, but I wanted to reiterate it again. And again, I've been happy to meet with any group at any time to talk about this. I've met with the Stay With HCDE folks. I will talk to anybody, but I defend the process. I don't think anything bad can come from looking at giving HCDE better ideas to educate our kids. Sorry. Anybody else? Oh, Phil, one more question I had for you. Sure. You were at the meeting the county gave, and I watched the video. I saw many things that I believe to be maybe half-truths, and I'm sure that Mr. Bennett was positioning for his client. You were there. Did you see anything that would, in your mind, say, hey, we need to stop this process?
No, the aspect of an attorney representing his client, the client in this case is the Hamilton County Department of Education. It's not Hamilton County. There are 4 parties to an agreement that have dealt with the creation of this high school to begin that on the front end. Those parties could agree to different things if they chose to do so. One party should not be able to be in control of all of them. So that is the concern. I understand that the Hamilton County Department of Education considers this to be an asset. That should not be the case. We should be looking at what is best for the benefit of our kids. We were discussing, you were discussing actually the aspect of the scores that were given, and the response was that they changed the testing method. That is a problem whenever we're looking at issues here if our kids are not doing as well as we think they should do. And we should be looking at this with relation to our kids, not as a political matter.
The other thing that disappointed me a little bit about that, and I think there's a lot of good information that came out of that, but never once did I hear anybody from HCDE say, here are our ideas to improve education. I heard, hey, everything's just great, more than anything else. And I think we're fooling ourselves if we don't continually look at better ways, especially given the record. And I've only met Mr. Exum once, but it struck me We're the best of the worst of the worst.
Chris, did you offer to be part of the panel?
Yes, we offered to be part of the panel and were denied putting anyone from the SSBC, Amy, myself, whoever they wanted up there. They said no, they did not want us.
And Phil, did you offer?
I did not offer, I thought I would sit back and listen. And I listened to the position of the Hamilton County Department of Education that that asset was considered to be a valuable asset.
Anybody else have anything? Call for adjournment? Motion for adjournment? Anyone? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.